Hello and welcome to the video. This is a class project of mine, and I've been working on it for a little while now. And it's the idea of busting a real world myth, and as a result, helping people understand better something about reality. And this myth that I've chosen is IQ determines how smart a person is and how successful they can become. And I want to go over why it's a problem that we view IQ like this, how it impacts our lives, the other quotients that can be used to measure various forms of intelligence or traits in a person, and the effect that each one has on people, both in day-to-day stuff and schooling, as well as work and other aspects of people's lives. The alteration of traits over time, whether the numbers of IQ and other quotients can change, especially in the younger years, focus there. And then finally, determining an outcome of the results of both the survey I've done and all the research I've collected, and whether or not IQ actually does impact or control parts of your future, as well as the other quotients. The goal of this video being that you take away how each quotient can impact your life on a long-term scale as well as day to day, both in work and school. Ideally, you come out of this realizing what they can and can't do, what they do and don't mean for you, and you can come to your own conclusion as to how important these quotients are. So before we ask the question of why is it a problem that we view IQ like this, we need to understand what IQ is. IQ is defined as intelligence quotient, and Britannica says it is a number used to express the relative intelligence of a person, essentially simplifying down intelligence and problem-solving abilities into a number after a test has been taken to address them. Why is it a problem? Do we view IQ like this? How smart a person is and how successful they can become is all tied to this number, right? Well, first of all, I think you can tell that simplifying everything down into a number is not all encompassing. It just doesn't work like that. It doesn't define overall intelligence, including stuff like emotional intelligence. It only look in non-school related things. It only really looks at intelligence that is applicable in a school situation or a problem solving situation. And this doesn't really work in terms of determining someone's life outcomes or schooling outcomes, as having a bad IQ score doesn't prevent someone from picking up things like skills or trades that can lead to high levels of success. You could absolutely have someone who is in a trade who is able to follow instructions well and is very skilled with their hands. And as a result, they are then able to have a very successful career, even if they have a very low or what is traditionally considered a bad IQ score. And then on the opposite side, having a good one doesn't guarantee success either. There are links to negative effects when it comes to that, and I'll get to it later, but there's not a guarantee of success if you have a high IQ. It's not something that just instantly comes or comes easily. So, does IQ impact our lives at all, given that most people don't even know theirs? Well, I would say absolutely. Even though not everyone has been tested for their IQ, or people have used maybe generic internet testing that is not necessarily reliable, we all have IQ. It is something that is in every person, and it is a testable trait, basically, of our intelligence. And I went over why we have problems with the way we view IQ, but it does to an extent impact our lives. It can benefit you, it can hurt you, especially on the extreme sides of the spectrum. People who are incredibly high in IQ tend to be more depressed, and also tend to be more lonely. And people on the very, very low end can struggle to do baseline tasks. However, most people anywhere in the middle, your average people, your 99% of the human population, it doesn't really hurt or help so much to the extent that it is going to change someone's life. However, something that does affect the 99% of people, and even the outliers, very, very, very much so, is EQ, emotional quotient, which is defined as psychological faculties that enable individuals to perceive, understand, express, and control their emotions, and to discern and respond appropriately to the emotions of others. And that's very, very relevant to someone's success both in the workplace and in school and in life in general, because it's how you build your relationships. If you have a higher EQ, you are able to better build, sustain, and understand what relationships are valuable. It often surpasses IQ in predicting success, and everyone has it, and it can be worked on. It can literally be ramped up over time. You are able to improve your EQ. IQ, not as much. IQ is very much so improved at a very young age. And then after that, you can't really do much with it. EQ is flexible throughout your entire life. It enables leadership. It enables the ability to go through challenging times. It enables the ability to engage with other people and be very, very productive in doing so. It really, really, really does drive home that IQ is not necessarily the best indicator of success, both in and out of school, because this is something that can be worked on and influences everyday relationships. And those relationships can get you places, they can get you to successful areas. And generally speaking, I would argue the EQ is a much better indicator of success and is more flexible than IQ. Your other factor that is also very important is AQ. AQ is not quite as influential or as important as EQ, and it's a bit more of a lenient term. It's kind of come around more recent years in the 2000s, but it is very important to note as it relates to EQ, and it's another quotient pointing out here again that there's more than just one measurement for someone's intelligence, because you have a bunch of different parts and aspects to your brain, and that's not all able to be measured in necessarily intelligence, but also in how you react, how you deal with situations. EQ is how you deal with other people, how you read other people, how you understand other people. AQ is adversity quotient. And adversity quotient is a person's ability to manage difficulties and transform obstacles into opportunities. So now that we know more about adversity quotient, emotional quotient, and intelligence quotient, I did do a study actually on all three of these things and what people knew about them and how people reacted to hearing different things about them. So we're going to go ahead and dive into that. So hopping into the survey here, I got about 30-ish people who are mostly college students with a few exceptions in and out. And most of them are ages 18 to 21 years old. And these were my target demographic, trying to understand how these people who are kind of in a work/school life hybrid viewed and saw IQ, EQ, and AQ. From there, I asked them what IQ stands for, and about 2/3 of them knew what it stood for and were able to correctly tell me, and about 1/3 said they had no clue. From there, I then asked, do you know specifically or generally what your IQ is? And about 35% said yes, with about 65% saying no, which was a very interesting split to me because I didn't expect the number to be so high on the yes. However, I do not know if those are informal surveys or if they are actual psychiatric evaluations or where they necessarily got their specific or general IQ number from. From there, I then actually asked people to put their IQ on a scale of 50 to 150. The reason being, no one is really going to have an IQ outside of that range unless they are a super genius or have a severe brain deficiency that would probably disable them from even taking this example survey. All right. And then from there, I had them look at a chart in another section where they could not go back anymore. And I had them put their IQ on the following scale. And this scale shows where average, low, and high scores are, and generally gave people a ballpark of where they would be falling depending on what their number was. After that, all of a sudden, all the numbers in the survey results, after being asked again between 50 and 150, where would you put your IQ, skewed heavily average to above average to superior, with only one answering under 100.
which I found incredibly interesting. And then finally, the last thing I looked at was, do people know what EQ and AQ are? For the most part, it was no, using some educated guessing from having given them the intelligence quotient earlier. A lot of people were able to guess EQ. However, only 3 people knew what both EQ and AQ were and were able to aptly describe them. So those were my survey results, and I found this very interesting because that really does show how people view EQ, AQ, and IQ. Aside from the numerical survey results, another thing that I did look at and see interesting results on were a lot of people didn't necessarily want to know their IQ because they were afraid of how it would look or like reflect in their lives. So people were afraid that if they knew their IQ, it may be a drop to their self-esteem. However, other people were afraid of an inflated ego. This kind of idea of it's going to affect self-perception, and as a result, it's going to affect the way people carry themselves, the way people think they can view themselves, the way people handle themselves. And it really, whether they realized it or not, fell into this idea of subconsciously, we think that IQ and these quotients, these numerical measurements, have a lot more weight than they probably actually do.
As I wrap up here, I do want to say I genuinely believe that the myth that IQ determines how smart a person is and how successful they become is false. I just do not see a way in which it is real, with the exception of the outliers on either side of the IQ spectrum, right? The people who are so absurdly low, they're in the 0.0001%, and same with the top side, where they're in the 0.001%. Those people, aside from the anomalies, I do not believe it impacts a person, a person's ability to be successful and how smart they are. I think you can acquire intelligence in other ways, and I think you can become successful in other ways without needing those 2 things. I would argue if there's a quotient to measure that off of, it would be EQ and AQ, either of them. They both would work. Your ability to overcome situations or build relationships with other people is far, far more important than simply being test smart. It is going to get you a lot more in life. And I genuinely can say I believe that that is more important. And I think if there was anything that we should perpetuate an idea about, it would be about EQ and our ability to form and work on forming relationships, as well as AQ and our ability to overcome adversity and our mistakes and things that happen all around us, and to push through all of it and to just get out on the other side. And that will determine how successful you can become both in school and in life. That all being said, thank you so much for watching. I have the sources in the description, and I hope you have an amazing day.